At exactly 13:47 hours in occupied Zaporizhzhia, 12 Ukrainian drones screamed toward a Russian ammunition train at 97 kilometers per hour. Russian artillery had already zeroed in on their launch point, and the first 152mm shell landed 800 meters away, close enough to knock dust from the ceiling. The operators had seconds to decide: abort and survive, or continue the mission under direct fire. They had about 12 minutes to reach the target, while Russian guns needed only 3 minutes to lock in their exact coordinates. What followed involved technology almost too simple to seem real: a $10 million electronic warfare vehicle rendered completely worthless, and a strike that cost Russia $127 million in 4 seconds. This is the story of how modern warfare changed forever, with nothing more than what amounts to a very long fishing line. Here's something that sounds completely backwards. Russia spent $10 million on an electronic warfare vehicle designed to knock NATO drones out of the sky at 30 kilometers, and Ukrainian operators defeated it with technology comparable to a fishing reel. Each of the 12 drones trailing toward that ammunition train dragged a fiber-optic cable thinner than a fishing line. While Russian jamming flooded every frequency with 10 kilowatts of interference, these cables carried data at light speed, completely immune to every electronic countermeasure Russia threw at them. The physics behind this immunity is surprisingly straightforward. Radio signals travel through air and can be disrupted by flooding those frequencies with noise. Fiber-optic cables transmit data as light pulses bouncing through glass fibers at 200,000 kilometers per second. Jamming radio waves to stop a fiber-optic signal is like trying to stop someone's flashlight by shouting at it. The physics simply don't interact. Russia actually pioneered this technology first, deploying fiber-optic drones in spring 2024, but Ukraine caught up fast and scaled production to industrial levels. Current Ukrainian fiber-optic drones can reach 41 kilometers behind enemy lines, and the country now produces over 1,000 units per month across 35 different companies. The cost dropped from $2,500 per unit in 2023 to roughly $1,200 in 2025 for a 10-kilometer capable drone. Compare that to the traditional drone interception rate. Russian electronic warfare was stopping 80% of radio-controlled drones by mid-2024, making them nearly obsolete. Fiber-optic drones flipped that equation entirely. The real-world impact became undeniable by November 2025. These drones were now reaching 19 kilometers behind front lines into cities like Kramatorsk. Traditional air defense systems worth $20 million each were being systematically defeated by drones that cost less than a used motorcycle. The technology that military analysts initially dismissed as too primitive for modern warfare was proving them spectacularly wrong. Sometimes the simplest solution really is the most effective, but having unstoppable drones is only half the equation. The other half is knowing exactly where to point them. And Ukraine had spent months hunting for the perfect targets. Railways form the backbone of Russian military operations in Ukraine. Every tank, artillery shell, and soldier moving to the front lines travels by rail at some point. Russia's logistics network depends on these steel arteries, and Ukraine identified them as strategic weak points worth systematic attention. The strikes weren't random acts of opportunism. They followed weeks of intelligence gathering, surveillance, and careful target selection. On May 24, 2025, FPV drones hit a fuel train in occupied Zaporizhzhia, destroying 3 tankers along the Verkhny Tokmak to Molokhansk corridor. June 21st saw another fuel train struck 35 kilometers from the front lines between Lavadny and Molokhansk. Then came July 29th when Ukrainian drones launched a large-scale attack on Salsk railway station deep in Rostov Oblast. The strike damaged overhead power lines and suspended train traffic for days. By November 3rd, Ukrainian Special Operations Forces were hitting targets with FP-2 drones carrying 105-kilogram warheads at ranges up to 200 kilometers. They struck a fuel train and warehouse in occupied Luhansk, showing that nowhere along Russia's supply chain was truly safe. Russia responded with equal aggression. Between August and mid-October 2025, Russian forces launched nearly 300 attacks on Ukrainian rail infrastructure. They began using precision Shahed drones to target individual locomotives, forcing Ukraine to halt train services to key eastern cities like Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. This became a brutal exchange where both sides understood the stakes. Every successful strike disrupted logistics for weeks, forced troop repositioning, and cost millions in replacement equipment and lost combat capability. The Rostov rail line became a particular obsession for Ukrainian planners. This route moved troops, heavy equipment, and ammunition from Russia proper to the front lines. Combined with partisan sabotage attacks, the systematic drone strikes created a logistics nightmare for Russian commanders. They couldn't predict when or where the next strike would land, which meant diverting resources to protect rail infrastructure instead of using them at the front. The psychological impact matched the physical damage. All this preparation led to one specific mission: 12 drones, 3 bunkers full of operators, and a 97-second window to destroy the most valuable target they'd tracked in months. The mission planning was obsessively detailed. Ukrainian operators had studied the route for weeks, identifying a 2-kilometer stretch where the track ran straight through open terrain. The train would be too far from defensive strongpoints and too exposed for close protection to matter effectively. The window would last exactly 97 seconds. 3 operator bunkers were positioned 500 meters apart, and that specific distance mattered critically. A 152mm artillery shell creates a lethal radius out to 300 meters. At 500-meter spacing, even a direct hit on one bunker couldn't affect the others. Russia could eliminate 1 bunker, maybe 2 with incredible luck, but never all 3 simultaneously. The Russians detected the drone launch the moment 48 brushless motors powered up. That electromagnetic spike lit up every sensor within 10 kilometers. Like stadium lights turning on the second artillery round, landed 600 meters from the operators, closer, but still searching. Through the lead drone's camera, black diesel smoke from the train was clearly visible. The third round impacted 450 meters away and changed everything. Shrapnel whizzed through the air at 1,500 meters per second, and 3 pieces severed the fiber-optic cables of drones 2, 5, and 8. These drones immediately switched to backup battery power and radio control, which meant they were now vulnerable to jamming. The R-330ZH Zytel electronic warfare vehicle detected the drone swarm at 7 kilometers and activated its transmitters. 10 kilowatts of electromagnetic energy flooded every frequency from 100 megahertz to 2 gigahertz, enough power to overwhelm commercial drone control channels and GPS signals within 30 kilometers. The 3 drones on radio backup went dark instantly, their screens turning to static, but the other 9 kept coming. Inside the Zytel's command cabin, the operator watched in confusion as 9 drone signals remained impossibly clean despite maximum jamming. He tried every frequency band, broadcasting noise across the entire spectrum. Nothing worked. A BTR-82A crew at checkpoint 9 had exactly 8 seconds to engage as the swarm crossed perpendicular to their position. The gunner needed to aim 15 meters ahead of targets, moving at 27 meters per second. By the time he calculated the proper lead angle and walked his fire onto the flight path, the drones had passed behind a tree line. Every round missed. The Pantsir's 1 air defense system switched to electro-optical mode and opened fire at 3,200 meters. The gunner set his 30mm shells for airburst detonation, creating a wall of metal fragments. Drone 6 vanished in an orange fireball. 3 seconds later, Drone 11 exploded. The 7 survivors immediately scattered in 3 directions. The Pantsir gunner made a fatal mistake that's repeated in air defense training failures worldwide. He chose to engage the high-altitude group because they were easier to track against the sky, ignoring his training that says always engage the closest threat first. While his guns tracked upward, the low-altitude drones accelerated toward the train completely unbothered. Meanwhile, 4 special drones flying at 500 meters altitude dove toward the railroad tracks 800 meters behind the speeding train. They released thermite charges that ignited on impact. Thermite burns at 2,500 degrees Celsius, while railroad steel melts at 1,370 degrees. The thermite ate through the rails like acid through paper, transforming 4 sections of track into puddles of molten metal. Within seconds, battery warnings flashed on operator screens. Drone 3 showed 18%. Drone 7 showed 21%. They needed 30 more seconds to reach the train, but had maybe 20 seconds of powered flight remaining. At 12,000 meters, the fiber-optic cables released automatically. Drones transitioned to battery power, now flying free but also no longer immune to jamming. It didn't matter anymore. They were too close to stop. 7 drones remained airborne. 6 hits were needed for mission success. The margin was still positive. Drone 3's battery died completely at 100 meters from target, and the motors stopped instantly. But momentum carried it forward at 97 kilometers per hour with minimal air resistance. The operator had calculated this perfectly. The dead drone would coast the final distance on physics alone before aerodynamic drag could stop it. Russian combat engineers were attempting to decouple Wagon 22 while the train was moving. The coupling was under 4,000 tons of tension at 56 kilometers per hour. The safety mechanism was specifically designed to never release under load. The engineers might as well have been trying to untie a knot made of steel while bulldozers pulled it from both ends. Drone 9 caught a lucky burst from a PKM machine gun. Shrapnel clipped its battery pack and it tumbled into a wheat field. 400 meters short, 6 drones continued toward impact. At 13:59 hours, the lead drone slammed into the coupling between the locomotive and the first wagon. The RPG-7 warhead detonated on impact, creating a shaped charge that produced a jet of molten copper, moving at 2,800 meters per second, 9 times the speed of sound. The massive steel coupling pin sheared instantly. 4 more impacts followed in precise sequence. Over the next 3 seconds, Wagon 3's fuel valve assembly ruptured, spraying pressurized diesel across the tracks. Wagon 7's brake line severed, locking every trailing wagon's wheels simultaneously. Wagon 18's thin-skinned ammunition car took a direct hit, starting a chain of secondary explosions that rippled down the train. Then came Wagon 22 at 13:51 hours and 18 seconds. Inside Wagon 22, 12 tons of TOS-1 thermobaric rockets had been slowly heating from vibration-damaged seals. The warhead impact pushed the internal temperature past 447 degrees Celsius, which is the auto-ignition point for the fuel-air mixture. When it detonated, the pressure wave propagated at 3,000 meters per second. Wagons 20 through 24 simply ceased to exist, vaporized into plasma by the thermobaric blast. The explosion lifted wagons 25 through 47 completely off the rails and flipped them end over end across the countryside like a child's toys. The mushroom cloud climbed to 1,400 meters, visible from positions 30 kilometers away. 6 modified racing drones with a combined value of approximately $4,800 had just erased $127 million in Russian military assets. More critically, they had severed the only rail line feeding 3 mechanized divisions that were preparing for an assault scheduled to begin the next morning. That assault never happened. The divisions had no ammunition, no fuel reserves, and no way to receive either until the rail line was rebuilt and cleared. The technology and tactics used here are spreading globally, and they're fundamentally changing how modern wars will be fought. So what do you think about this new era of drone warfare? Can an $800 drone really beat a $10 million jammer? Or will countermeasures eventually catch up? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and smash that like button if this video opened your eyes to how modern warfare is actually being fought. Subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the technology and tactics reshaping our world. Until next time, stay curious